you've done all the practices. You've enabled connectedness. You've ameliorated foolishness to the best of your ability. You're just a human. And then something like this happens, and you have to ask the question, why?
Why? Right.
And
right.
It's not just the question of Ecclesiastes where it's like, oh, just things happen, and sort of it's even deeper than that, because Job knows that God did this to him because of the sequence of events that happen. It's not just time and chance that happens like in Ecclesiastes, right, where there's these patterns that roll through and whatever. It specifically targeted Job and specifically decimated him in every single way, so that he doesn't have a choice but to view this as God's hand, we'll say.
Right.
And his friends that gather around him see it the same way, and they just say to him, well, you must have done something really bad. Because right, obviously the righteous are rewarded and the wicked are punished. Let me put it this way. So we have our proverbial wisdom, and then we have our Ecclesiastes wisdom that sort of gets just trounced in the book of Job, because the friends sort of argue a little bit from Ecclesiastes, but mostly from Proverbs. Be like, we're holding up tradition. We're telling you what the wise people have told us. We're not making this up on our own. We're trying to help you out, Job. You're refusing. You keep saying these wild things. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's more proof of your wickedness and whatever. Now, for the middle part of the book of Job, so Job's connected to God, not a fool in the beginning. He's connected to God, not a fool at the end. In the middle, this upside down phase, he's absolutely a fool. Everyone thinks he's foolish, and he's absolutely disconnected. He talks about how, no one listens to him, no one's comforting him, no one's hearing the words he's saying. His family and friends have abandoned him, and then God himself is hidden. There's a cloud between me and God. I don't have any connectedness. And my argument, I guess, would be that in the narrative of Job, and Job talks about this, you have to become the fool if you're undergoing like an actual transformation. Like, you don't get to not be a fool at some point. It's not we shouldn't, it's like, all right, let's just be a fool all the time then. No, like, don't be an idiot. But this happens like with so many characters in the Bible. Like this is King David becomes a fool. At one point, like as he's exiled, he pretends to be a madman. He's drooling on his beard and he's like acting crazy because he doesn't want to basically entertain this foreign king's alliance. And this king's like, hey, David's been exiled, maybe I can make a pact with him or whatever. And David just comes and is acting like he's gone nuts. And in some ways David actually goes a little crazy at different points, and you're just like, why would God do that? But David is like a transformational figure for Israel, as well as he's undergoing a transformation himself, going from being the shepherd boy with a heart after God to being the king. And then you St. Paul talks about this in reference to Christ. Christ is foolishness to the Greeks and a stumbling stone for the Jews. And right, so you can't just say foolishness is the opposite of wisdom, because God will make a fool out of you in order to do something in the world, it seems.
Right. The path to wisdom goes through foolishness.
Right.
And the path to wisdom can start at wisdom, go through foolishness, and end in more wisdom.
This is Ian McGilchrist's coincidence of opposites. Wisdom and foolishness are actually bound together by a higher wisdom that enables foolishness.
Yeah. The transformation doesn't seem to occur as a result of propositions, or what we might call philosophy in, we'll say, recent times. It comes as a result of an experience.
I mean, Book of Job is a death and resurrection story. Job doesn't actually die, but he has a second life afterwards. Right. And like as Job sort of wails and flails through his arguments, and like he's very much like not a stoic. He actually makes these discoveries along the way. One of the other things he starts to think about is he starts thinking about the resurrection. And it comes in this strange way where he's like, if only I was a tree, because if a tree is cut down, so he's imagining like literally a family tree. All of his sons and daughters are the branches, and basically he's been cut off at the trunk, and the tree's been, fallen. And he says, if I were a tree at the scent of water, I could bud again. I could sprout again. Right. I could have another shoot. But then he sort of laments the fact that men aren't like that men just go to the grave and that they aren't seen anymore. And Job is always doing this sort of, he proposes something in the negative. He's like, it's not the case that man would go down and then come back up again. So there's this apophatic idea of the resurrection, but he grounds this in sort of the memory of God. And so he says to God, why don't you just hide me in Sheol? So Sheol is the realm of the dead. It's just sort of like the nether realms where nothing's conscious, and that's where you go when you die. And so he's like, just hide me in Sheol, and then when your wrath is past, remember me.
Okay.
And so then he has Peugeot talks a lot about memory, and we have this in other biblical stories. We have, like, after the flooding, God remembers Noah, and then we have when Jonah goes into the belly of the fish, Jonah remembers the temple in the belly of the fish, So Job is also making this connection. He's like, even if I go down to Sheol, if God remembers me, I'll be able to be brought forth again. And he says, and then he even sort of waxes poetically on this idea that God really does love me, and if I am gone, eventually he will start to want me around again, because he'll desire the work of his hands, he says, and eventually God will want to bring Job back because he misses him, and so he's presented that. And so at the very end of the story, we have this so after everyone's gathered into his house, and after Job has made the prayer, and the friends have made the sacrifice because God wasn't happy with the friends, then Job has he gets double what he had before. So he had 1,000 camels before, now he has 2,000. He had 5,000 sheep before, now he has 10,000 sheep, and so on. At the beginning he has 10 children, and at the end he just has 10 children again. And so you're kind of expecting this doubling of the children. And then the other thing is, at the beginning he has 7 sons and 3 daughters, and at the end he has 7 sons and 3 daughters. And you're like, well, what? Why is that? And it seems to be hinting at the idea that God I'm choking up.
Yeah.
God remembers Job's children,
right,
that died in the beginning. So because what are the odds to have, you have kids again, and you have 7 sons and 3 daughters again? Like, this would be, imagine that those decades following, like, as he's having children again,
yeah.
And when the 10th child is born, they're like, that must have been such a relief for Job, because he would have known that God still remembered them.
Remembered him, yeah. Remembered the old Job.
Remembered the other children. So he if God remembers them, he hasn't lost them.
Right, yeah.
And so he actually does have 20 children.
Right.
10 that are gone but remembered, and then the 10 that are there. But now Job, he actually has confirmation that God remembers things, and so there's a hope for the resurrection. This is me putting the pieces together. This isn't explicit in the text at all. But but once I saw that, I was blown away.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful imagery in particular.